And the reason that that's for themselves.
Women, yeah.
Usually.
Not that they feel, but they're going right now.
Yeah, she's like 5 minutes.
Oh, there you go.
Call to order 6:30. Okay, we're gonna start the March 1st, Committee of the Whole Board meeting. You call roll call, card.
Andy Franklin.
Okay, Andy Franklin.
Danielle Bailey.
I'm here. Andy Franklin here, Danielle Bailey here.
Here, I'm here.
Carla Pennington Cross here.
Tamika Bukovic.
Here.
Ben's here. Oh.
He's right there.
Edwin.
Can we have a pledge of allegiance, please?
No, you have to say here.
Okay, guys, meeting. Pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Motion to approve the agenda. So moved. Moved by Carla, seconded by Tamika. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Did you, then? Did you?
Said aye.
Okay. 2A curriculum. Who is gonna start with that? Jenica?
Yes, tonight we have our building principals, Ms. Young, and then we also have Mr. Kreider here and myself. We're gonna kind of go through the mid-year check-in data. It's also been shared in board docs with you as well, so if you'd like to follow. Screen.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Great. So just want to walk through the Glen Hills data and take a look at sort of this mid-year component of things.
Can we push this back just a little, because then I can. Oh. There we go. Thank you.
So in alignment with our district goals of increasing math and literacy proficiency, as well as closing achievement for subgroups, and taking a look at, in addition to that, creating systems and structures to promote a safe learning environment. Some of the data that is here, it looks at our academic achievement data as measured by STAR, which is our one measure that we're using for sort of that satellite view out of looking at how students are performing in trends. We'll take a look at attendance data, as well as looking at some of behavior referral data as measures that are quantitative in nature to take a look at. So this was our fall data that we looked at for STAR across the board, looking at demographics. As you can see, there is some pretty significant gaps in between our students. If we fast forward to our winter data, all of the areas that are highlighted in bright green are areas that we've shown growth in. So we have more students who are in the proficient area in all categories, with the exception of our Asian students in reading and our two or more race students in math. So we're seeing growth overall, but what we are also seeing as an area of growth is that we have a continued gap that exists and has also increased between our white and African American students. as well. So in our other subgroups, we really need to work at closing that gap. Our attendance data. If we look at our attendance for last year, at this time from September to January, we were at a 94% attendance rate overall for the school. We're at a 93% attendance rate. It is typically the goal of schools to be at a 95% attendance rate, which means that students are not missing more than 10 days of school within the course of the school year. And so we are slightly under that, and we are really taking a look at some of the correlation that we see with students who have frequent absences in their academic achievement. So working on making sure we have students present. That being said, we have been hit by flu and gunk a lot this year, and so we've just had a lot of absences and some really sick kiddos this year. Last school year, we had 126 referrals at this point to date. We also have 126 this year. The difference between that, though, and the celebration is that 67 of those this year were just for cell phone infractions, and 59 were for actual behaviors that would not be in alignment with our code of conduct within the school. The last year's comparison was 126 referrals for behavior, so a definite improvement in what we're seeing in terms of student behavior. Our behavioral referral by grade level just kind of lays out and breaks down what that looks like. Typically, last year and this year, we see the same trends in terms of having more referral data at the 7th and 8th grade level. Our data by gender, we can still see that we have some trends that are consistent in terms of males being referred slightly at a slightly higher rate than females, which is something that we need to pay attention to as we explore the way in which we handle behavior within the building. Our behavioral referral data for special education students is a highlight. Last school year, we had 26 students who were referred to date, and we have 10 that were referred this year, which speaks to the fact that we're really working with students through their IEPs to make sure that we are supporting them and giving them what they need in the environment and helping structure the environment so they can experience success here. Behavioral referral data by race. If we take a look at last year's, I highlighted the green area. Last year, our referral rate for African American students was at 84, and this year we are at 63. Which is a significant decrease in the number of referrals for students in that demographic category. Theoretically, our suspension data is, I think, one of our biggest highlights. Last year, we were at 36 suspensions at this point of the year, with 7 pre-expulsions. This year, we are at 9 suspensions with 4 pre-expulsions. I would attribute this primarily to the work we've done around restorative practices and being able to work through student issues and family issues using circles as a way to repair harm that is done within the school environment. Additionally, in our suspension data, if we look at the percentage of suspensions, we're at 13 suspensions and pre-expulsions versus 43 from last year. So a significant decline. The other area that we see a decline is in the percent of African-American students and those students with special education needs being suspended from school.
Hold on. So let's go through that part, and if they have any questions, and then we'll go into the Parkway part.
Yeah, I just want to ask, I remember a year ago, we were going through this data, we just, had our year after the pandemic. I see well an uptick in the community, in school, with a lot of disciplinary issues, but just across the board nationwide, there are a lot of things. And the data, I look at it, and it looks like there's been some improvements. It looks like maybe some things, go back and forth a little bit. I guess from boots on the ground perspective, what's your sense of how things are? I haven't heard anything this year, whereas opposed to last year, I heard a lot and quite frequently. To me, I like to think that no news is good news, but I also like to think that there's more going on than I know about. So I haven't gotten any direct complaints, which is, good. But I guess I'd ask, are you seeing, are you feeling positivity?
I feel an incredible amount of positivity. It feels like a completely different school in many ways this school year. I think the feedback that I've gotten from staff is that they feel that way as well. And they're incredibly pleased with the direction that we're moving in, and they feel very positive about it. When I go into classrooms, students are in the classrooms learning. We certainly have students that have dysregulation and behaviors, but we are much more well-equipped to deal with those. And I think one of the biggest pieces in terms of working through that is the addition of our supervisory aides within the building, which provide more supervision and more oversight. And then in addition to that, we have more support on our student services team, and we have a well-functioning team that is on the ground. And so a lot of like things like pure conflict and natural things that students at this age are working through can be resolved with that, which then leads us in a way to have a little bit more support, that when things rise to a level of something that isn't like violates a code of conduct or is harmful to people, then that can be taken by administration, and we have the time to work through restorative practices with people. We have time to bring families in. Mr. Williams and I have conducted several family meetings with families and students, and that has been super productive in just bringing other people into the fold to help resolve conflict within the building. And we've seen a lot of success with that.
That's great. Which is
yeah.
very good to hear.
Questions? Okay.
Do you have the 2018 star data or 2019? Is it somewhere in the archives? Have you sent that to me?
Yeah, I was actually sitting here wondering what the margin of error is on the star data.
No, it's not.
The change, they don't ascribe any margin of error on it.
It's hard to even compare to the forward exam. It's
I
not
just
really-
mean,
yeah.
you know, I'm just, like, if the change is from 20% proficient to 22%, is there some range in there that's a margin of error where we can say that's not a meaningful change, or?
Oh, I get what you're saying.
I see what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah, I
just,
do,
I
I
don't,
do.
you know, if they're little pockets, if we can look at that and say that's significant statistically, or is that like, we're still waiting to see if we're gonna see real movement? That's what I'm curious about.
So I would say the movement from students moving to that category of being proficient is a substantial move, right? If there's a scale score within STAR that shows that more incremental move is where you'll see that margin of error, which I think is about 5 points either way, right?
Oh, that little line. in the
Right,
reports
so
we
there
get.
is like a scaled score that students get. And if we take a look at that scaled score, we can really look at like, are students in all brackets growing? So one of the things that we dove into with some of the staff members is, are we seeing students in that basic category or the below basic category moving up, right? We want to see growth for all students.
Yeah.
Our school goal is written around that jump into that next bracket, which is a pretty significant jump for it to happen, right? It wasn't like we had a bunch of kids sitting on the edge, like ready to move up.
Right.
It's a pretty significant jump when we look at that percentage point.
It'd be cool to see a sort of scatter chart,
Yeah,
what all those
Yep.
bars overlap look
Yep.
like, see that density.
Yep.
I don't know if you can do that. Can you do that?
I don't know that STAR.
Something.
They have a
Okay.
database. Yeah.
Yeah.
It hasn't changed much since I was here. I mean,
Yeah.
It's a weird test. It's different than what they're used to taking. I mean, as a group, it might give you some good data, like the percentage. Individually, it can vary. It can be a very wide difference between fall and winter, depending on if the kid is actually taking the test. So individually, sometimes they'll tell you like, oh, this kid grew 3 grade levels, and it's like, well, that probably didn't happen.
Or like my son went down 3 grade levels because he wanted to get to band.
So
Right.
individually, it may not be super accurate. As a group, it's going to measure what it's measuring. So
On the attendance, I was curious, I haven't heard about COVID. Has COVID been causing any absences? Or I don't even know what the quarantine rules are anymore. Is that part of what's keeping our attendance a little low?
Actually, no, in the sense that when a student has COVID, there still is that 5-day period of quarantine. And then they can return 5 days with mask, right? So when students are quarantined because of COVID, we categorize their attendance as a Q, which does not count against their attendance,
okay.
right?
Got it.
The issue is with the RSV that was going on, we had several students with a lot of upper respiratory issues this year, and it was that lingering, like we had kids out for weeks at a time with that. One of the questions that I raised around that too is if we are categorizing, and this is, if we're categorizing COVID as a quarantine, if a student is sick with RSV and we know that, can we also think about categorizing in that way? Because I do think it impacts our data. We certainly don't want families to send students to school if they're not well, right? Because that just spreads, it just keeps it going. The flu has also been, and now we're in a period of strep throat.
Nice. Awesome. Can't wait. Sorry, just, these are just like nuts and bolts for me to wrap my heads around it. On the behavior referrals, this data is by referral and not by student, right?
It's by referral. You are right about that. So there may be overlap in student, like it may be actually a smaller number of students.
Got it.
Right? Because there may be students that have multiple referrals.
Okay, and that, you just can't tell me that?
Yeah.
Or just haven't gone there?
No, I, by doing that, what I would end up doing if I identify student data around that, I'm worried about identifying students, especially because it's broken down by demographics. So in order to protect confidentiality.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's what I thought you were gonna say.
Yeah.
I love that you're talking about restorative practices. I love that suspensions are down. I'm loving hearing that the SEAT and supervisory aides are making it. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah. And I was like, want to shout out to that our teachers are doing restorative practice in the classroom. They're taking that stance and lens. They're looking at utilizing those questions. And so, you know, circles are great and they're part of restorative practice, but so are the line of questioning and the way of thinking about behavior as being something we teach and not something we punish, right? And so our staff has embraced that and is doing an excellent job with it too.
One of the things last year that we kind of got complaints, and it was the teachers felt like, I think it's different this year, but they felt like they didn't know what to do. Is that still a complaint, or they feel like they have the equipment or the know-how to do what they can in the classroom? Because I know last year there was quite a bit of calling you and calling Willie to say, what am I supposed to do? Are you getting called as much? And they're kind of handling things in classroom until it escalates. Then they call the big dogs, but basically it's being handled within the classroom.
And I think it too, like it goes along with the idea that you have supports from many different areas. So you have student support team members who might go in and watch a teacher in the classroom and say like, hey, here are some things that you can try. With restorative practices, we have some staff who are more experienced. And so people who are struggling with things in their classroom might go and watch that teacher do it, or say, can you come to my classroom? Or I'm having a tough time with my kids around this. Can you come up and help me run a circle? So there's a lot of shared practices that are happening within our instructional stand-up meetings in the morning. And in addition to that, every other week, we're meeting with our grade level teachers for CST meetings where we're looking at like where are students that we're concerned about on a social emotional level as well as academically? What are we doing to support them? How can we problem solve around that? And so we have the SST team and our instructional coaches at the table as well as administration with teacher teams. And then on the weeks that we don't meet with them, we meet with all the allied arts, PE, and music teachers so that they are aware of students who need more support in our school environment. So that if they teach those kids, we're all on the same page. Like if we know this strategy works with this student, like let's all get on the same page with that so we can support kids in a better way.
I have four, maybe five. But I want to piggyback, I'm just gonna be honest. Can I piggyback on her question? I think one of the last presentations we had, you guys presented like a behavior matrix, right? Which was like a guide for teachers to use. Are you guys still utilizing that? How's that working out?
We're utilizing it. I think it works really well. It provides clarity. It provides clarity with Mr. Williams and I when we're working with teachers to say, hey, this is what the matrix says, like, can you work on implementing these pieces at the classroom level? But it also works really well for Mr. Williams and I to say to families, like, this is our process and this is how we're following it. So there's so much more clarity around that, which promotes a sense of fairness that I think is important.
How does a teacher actually use it? I guess I want to understand. So if there's an incident, is it like a written document, or are they just looking at it and they're like, these are the practices I'm gonna employ? Or are they documenting what they're doing and that's being filed somewhere, we're keeping like how is it actually in practice? How does it work for teachers?
So based on whatever the, like the infraction is, right? So if there's an infraction within that behavior matrix, there's classroom managed behaviors and there's office managed behaviors.
Okay,
So if it's classroom managed, here are different supports that you can request from the student services team or from other staff members. So here's how we respond to students' needs. And then here are responses for behavior. And most of those are run along the lines of a contract with the student, an opportunity for a student to do some thinking and reflection sheets, the option for teachers to reach out to families, to have a meeting with families, and teachers are documenting those steps within the contact log. Anything that comes to the office is part of the behavior record.
is the contact log that teachers fill out part of the behavior record?
It is part of the student's record, but it's listed as a contact. It's not, there's a separate tab for behavior.
Okay,
It's a different, so like the contact log could look at, like it could say student met with counselor, you know, student had an attendance letter sent home. There could be many things within the contact log.
okay, thank you. The 21-22 behavior referrals you were referencing was like 126.
Yep.
Did we not break it out by cell phone referrals that year, or we didn't have cell phone referrals, or do we know if any of
Cell
those are
phones, cell phones were not managed by the office last year.
So teachers wouldn't have sent them for cell
So they
phones?
would not have written a referral for a cell phone. So that was all based on behavior outside of having a cell phone. That cell phone was usually just given to the office and Mr. Williams and I managed it, but it wasn't documented that way.
Two more questions.
Yep.
So the academic achievement data, like I see those numbers and I'm like, ooh, like that's jarring. But I guess the growth is a positive step. I'm curious what you are attributing to the growth. Last time you guys presented, or a couple times back, you had a lot of programs you were putting in place and other, things, but we haven't heard a lot about how block scheduling is going or how the programs are panning out. So I guess I'm curious. I've heard about the behavior, so maybe it's some of that. You might like having the extra support for behaviors, but what do you think is attributing to the growth? The follow-up to that is just, I like to consider these opportunity gaps, not achievement gaps. So I'm curious what you think. What opportunities are we not offering? What opportunities are lacking for these students that are below, that are not proficient, that are basic?
So I think that the feedback I've gotten from teachers around block scheduling is working really well. And the reasons for that is they feel like it has slowed down the pace of what they have to do and get through in the classroom so that they can focus on meeting kids' individual needs. So the structure of the block is like there's teaching, there's time for new learning, but there's also time for practice, right? And there's time to do support in groups. So you're having an opportunity to say, if I have students who are in need of additional support, I can bring them with me and have them work in a group with me, right? It also allows time for some studying or more time for collaborative projects, right? When I'm in classrooms, I have seen that students are attending, working, and there's movement, like they're getting up, they're moving, they're in groups, they're doing different activities within that block period. I do think the time on learning and the support around learning is a huge piece. I would say that in terms of the attributing growth, I feel like you have a strong, I think you more strongly see like an academic setting going on, right? Like it feels like there's more academic learning going on, which I would attribute to behavior, right? Okay. Like I do think that is an important piece. The opportunities that we're missing right now is I strongly believe that we have many new teachers in our building who are new to the curriculum that they're teaching. And until you have a full grasp, like I would say probably get a year under your belt with a curriculum, you can really start to think about how do I shape this to meet varied student needs, right? The first time you're walking through something as a teacher, it's very hard to have that kind of know-how to differentiate it. And so I think our teachers are working really hard at doing that, but it does probably feel a little bit like you're operating in the dark. So there's an opportunity for the improvement practice there. The other big opportunity that I see missing is STAR data is like out on a map down here, right? We're getting an idea of some trends, but we're not really getting at the different ways in which students know, the different ways in which students perform. And really not getting at this idea that like, are we building students who have knowledge of self? And are there other things that we should be looking at in terms of student achievement besides just the score? Because this isn't giving us a full picture, right? This is not our full picture of who our students are and what they can
That
accomplish.
was my last question, to speak to culture, because you're talking about behavior and you're talking about achievement. So I'm curious how you think about measuring like the actual student's experience, how they're experiencing this new positive culture that teachers and, like what they're feeling. I know we have a student survey possibly in the works, right? But how do you think about, how do you want to measure that? So what other areas would you look at?
So I think there's some things that we could look at in terms of measuring, taking a look at some of our students' involvement in after-school activities. I think is one measurement of students' engagement with their school community. I think another area that we could look at is identifying some, and then this takes some work from the curriculum and things, but taking a look at some capstone projects where students could demonstrate not only their ability to think and learn deeply on their feet and have some cross-curricular concepts and demonstrate knowledge in ways that might be expressive through art, might look at writing as a component, and then just making sure that we're addressing all those pieces. Because right now, outside of the STAR test and running records, we don't have, we have some common assessments, but we don't really have an infrastructure built to look at holistic work. And that's what we need to do. That's the work that's coming next, right, in my mind.
Well, one of the things we had talked about was getting data on club participation.
Oh, yeah.
Demographic data on,
Right.
and that would help give us some sort of picture of whether we're getting engagement into all our school communities, right? All our demographics. I would love to see that data.
It also makes me think about tracking participation in like gifted and talented opportunities and how you increase that. It sounds like that's, because I mean, some of that stuff sounds like what would normally be gifted and talented. If you open up access to that, you can challenge people. Okay. I'm done, thank you. Thanks for putting it.
So, yeah, I mean, culture and, being active in the community is good, but I just want to point out that we, as a school are assessing math ability. And that needs to improve.
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
And read.
Yeah.
I'm just pointing that
Yeah.
out.
And I would say that the one piece of feedback that I've received from teachers is they're feeling like after the pandemic, there is students who are excelling right now and students who are really struggling, and that like kind of that middle road is kind of like it's widened is the feedback.
I mean,
teachers.
Is it also possible that curricular choices play a role in that? Because, I mean, again, you can look at any data you want and kind of form an opinion on that, but explicit instruction has a higher effect size than inquiry-based learning, yet we use illustrative math, which is based around inquiry-based learning. So, and I know teachers plan themselves, but wouldn't it be nice if we gave them something like EdGems or some curriculum like that, where it's a curriculum based on explicit instruction? So I mean, again, I appreciate the, we are actively getting kids involved in the community, making them happier and all that, but, math achievement's also crucial.
May I ask what, I know we're doing the health, it was human growth, that curriculum this year. Are we looking at any other reviews for curriculum?
Right now, it's math.
It's
Right
math
now,
in
they're talking about math and the math curriculum review, so they'll be looking at different, options.
So
as a part
with
of
you
this.
saying that, so you're looking at the review now, and then when do you, is it this year that you come up and say, you know what, at the end of this year, we have looked at it, we think it's fine, or that we
Or
think
here
we
are
need
some
to change
additional
it?
Pilots.
Right.
Or
And
what's
so you'll
next.
decide that before the next school year, or do you do it?
Before the next.
Okay,
school year.
that's-
Yeah, so I'll come back with a report based on all of that and share that, with the team that has been doing all that work.
Okay,
Is
thank
that
you.
partner school-wide? You guys all choose the same curriculum typically, or?
Not always.
Okay.
Not always. We do have an articulation though with Nicolay, with algebra here and possibly geometry. So we do want to make sure that we're, definitely on the same page.
What is Nicola using for algebra right now?
What?
What is Nicola using for
They
algebra
were
right now?
doing big ideas, but they've kind of been a lot of teacher created items for algebra. So they do have like,
No, I know,
algebra
yeah.
teacher, collaborates with them, so then we have the same, assessment and all of that.
Yeah, no, I know there's like the resources for algebra aren't, I use Pearson, and that was okay. I had to make harder problems, so myself. CUDA helped me with that too. I mean, CUDA had really, really hard problems sometimes, so that was helpful. But I mean, honestly, in one of my college algebra courses, I used a book from like the 1990s because it was amazing.
Yeah, so it's
And
a lot of
rigorous,
teacher, created.
So anyway, so my only point is maybe like, again, with the Common Core, the standards didn't change that much, but it was significant in the sense that it's hard to get a book from the 19, because like when I taught college algebra, I had freedom to an extent with like what I taught. But when you're following the Common Core, obviously you have to make sure you hit those standards. So getting a book from like the 1990s or something like that's obviously going to be tough because it's not going to totally align. But I think there are options that are more direct instruction. But this was in 2017 when I was looking, so that was a while ago. But yeah, EdGems seemed like a closer resemblance of split instruction.
We're gonna be meeting soon.
Yeah.
The team to
Yeah.
kind of talk through that stuff, so I will share an invite if you'd like to come.
Yeah, when?
She will tell you
I'll
that
I'll
at a
send you
different
an
time.
Okay.
Y'all haven't like first, oh, yes, our student, now I want to be a part of this.
We'll have to post it.
So let's continue with Parkway.
Yep, so we are gonna look at the exact same data as we looked at with Glen Hills. You're gonna see a lot of the same trends. This was our fall 2022 STAR data, broken down by demographic. And so if we jump into the next one, just like Anna did, we highlighted the areas where we saw growth in proficiency. And so all those areas that are green, you see are areas that grew in proficiency. And unfortunately, the areas in red are where we decreased in proficiency around the STAR data. We have the same trend when it comes to attendance. Last year we were at 95%, and this year we're a little bit below 94%. I will tell you from being in the office and sitting and taking phone calls, just like Anna said, we have a ton of different sicknesses. I think our parents are a little bit more, especially at the elementary level, like willing to keep their kids back for longer periods of time. But we are also looking at some of those students that maybe are missing past 10 days. We're doing a lot more home visits, checking in on those students. So not that there are excuses, but that is where we sit right now. Our referral data from last year, you'll see that we had 112 total referrals. And this year we are at 141 referrals. So you do see an increase. I will say that with the addition of our student support team, we are able to do a little bit more like tier 3 interventions when it comes to social emotional support, which has allowed us to be more diligent when it comes to referrals. So we are keeping better track of data. I will say this year, especially with those students that are showing repetitive maybe incidents. And so because of that, I think we do have a little bit of an increase. This is a topic of conversation for our culture committee that we are continuously talking about. We look at this data on a regular basis and we're working through that. And so that is where we sit right now. We did break it down, just like Anna did, by grade level. And so you will see an uptick when it comes to 3rd grade. And typically what we've seen is as the students get older, we see more referrals. We did break it down by gender, and like Anna said, we have noticed that we do have more males than females that do get referred, as shown here. And we look at special education, and the question was about the amount of referrals. This is the amount of referrals, not the amount of students. So we had 5 referrals in 21-22 with students that were special education, and 14 this year, and non-special education were roughly similar. We broke it down by race, and so don't need to highlight anything, but you will notice, right, that our African Americans are referred at a much higher rate than the rest of our students. And our suspension data is the same from last year. And this just breaks it down by the number of students, so nothing crazy in there. 3 total students, or 3 total suspensions, sorry, not students.
So some could be.
So before we go to district, I'll leave it time to take questions.
Pardon me. Oh, I do have a couple of questions. So and tell me if I'm wrong in this, but when I look at this data and I see African Americans higher, I also take in mind that the percentage of African Americans in the school is higher. So as when I first got on the board and we had a majority white, I would expect that the majority of the kids who are being disciplined would be white because that's the majority. I know there's a gap, but I also would look at, because there's a majority, there would be a higher percentage of African Americans because of it. Now, I think there's still some work in between that. So it's twofold. One, that, yeah, technically they should have it because they have a majority of the people here, but yet there's still a gap within it. Is that the
Sure,
case?
but-
And I'm talking on both.
Yeah, data won't lie, though, it's not proportionate, right? Like,
Okay.
so, data doesn't lie to you. We aren't double, right, the amount of Black students to white students, which is what our data shows.
But that's what I mean. There
Yeah.
should be some increase, but it should not be double.
Sure.
Okay, that's what
But
I
that
mean.
area right there, we're talking about referrals, especially referrals of our Black students, is an area that we need to continuously talk about. We do talk about it, but we need to now dive deeper into that and talk about what are specific strategies that we're using, right? What are specific supports that we have in place to help our students?
And the other question I had, why, and it might be just age, but it's like all the kids are so beautiful and lovely when they're younger. What is making the difference when they go 3rd, 4th, 5th? And it goes 3rd is bad, you know, they're naughty. And then 4th, 5th, 6th is when they get here, they're younger, but they're okay. And then 7th and 8th, they get naughty again. So do you understand what I'm saying? It's like, why, where is it that we're disconnecting? Where are we disconnecting where that 3rd grader that was horrible or naughty last year are perfectly fine in 4th grade or better? And then in 8th grade, they get, I just, is there some correlation or something that we need to look at? Because that is where I looked at it and I'm like, they are so good up until 3rd grade and all of a sudden they're naughty. And I'm using that generally. So please don't come and say you called our kids naughty. I'm just saying from the data. So they're naughty, but then those same kids, if you look from last year to this year, the ones in 4th grade, even I've noticed that they don't have as many referrals in 4th grade as the 2020, 2021 data in 3rd grade.
Mhm.
So I don't know if I'm on the right track of knowing that or looking at that, but what's going on there?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's probably something we should look further at. I was looking to just see what our grade 4 data was among how many referrals, and you're right, there's quite a bit less grade 4 referrals than our grade 3 right now.
But I'm looking at last year grade 3 from this year grade 4.
Yeah.
That's what I did. It looks at
So,
last year
yeah,
grade
it
3,
is.
and then, because it was on there, and then
Uh-huh.
4th grade, and
Oh.
it's significantly low.
Yeah.
Lower, so where's the gap, and what did we do to combat that, or is it just new environment or something like that? So, but then we have that same trend, and I think I saw it in 6th grade last year to 8th grade. I mean, to 7th grade and vice versa. So I just think maybe,
It's interesting when you look at, so I could speak to it from Glen Hill's perspective in the sense that when I look at our 6th grade referral data and I look at our 7th grade referral data, there's a huge jump. there was last year as well. We have a whole seventh grade teacher team this year, so I don't know if like the way that they're looking at, the way they're looking at things in terms of referring students, and a lot of those referrals are cell phone referrals, right? Like, let's keep that in mind, right?
Right, but a lot of this happened even, it's not you guys, I don't think it's the team. It happens every year where the
Right.
sixth grade is perfect and then the seventh grade, they're a hot mess. And then they're a little bit better from seventh to eighth grade. And this is a trend that happens I mean, at least as I've been in this school, it happened when like Jada was in the fifth grade, the seventh graders were, and then she was great in sixth grade, and then her class was just like, when she got in the seventh grade, it was like, you know. So I think that might be something that we need to look into of what's going on in, and I'm not social emotional, but what's changing in their lives, in their world.
I mean, right, I mean, I feel like I wish we had a psychiatrist or a psychologist.
Right,
here
and
to
I
say
think
some of it is.
Yeah, I think there's a really natural, I mean, I'm gonna speak from, like, middle school's my wheelhouse. So when students start entering sixth, seventh, eighth grade, they start to question the world around them in different ways. And they want to push at boundaries, like they're asserting their independence, like in primitive times, they would be learning how to, assert themselves into adulthood, right? So they're practicing with some of those skills. So they're going to push boundaries, and they're familiar with the school, right? So there's familiarity with what the rules are, and there's familiarity with how to circumvent them, right?
Okay.
And so they're starting to push on those edges because that's normal, right?
But what can we
yeah.
do? Like, we know this.
Yeah,
So I
fight
guess,
human biology.
what can we
Yeah.
do to kind of
So there's.
edge that? And I
Yes,
guess that's,
yeah.
I'm not telling you to answer that in the world today,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying, maybe that's something that we haven't looked at really, and we're like, because that could be a huge thing between, and I also saw there was a difference of growth between seventh and eighth grade, or sixth and seventh grade too. So looking at that, is the behaviors causing them not to listen to Ben's direct instruction? I'm sorry, implicit instruction, so they can't. Do you understand? But do you understand what I'm saying? I would just,
Absolutely.
you don't have to answer those, but that might be something that you dive into with our psychologist that's on staff and
Yeah.
and working with Kelly to bring that all together, because then what is our whole goal? Teach and educate kids, right?
To answer your question, though, behavior management also has a very high effect size.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead. So looking at the race gaps, I see they're widening in both schools, right? Is that a state trend or is that us? Do you know, have you looked at the statewide STAR data?
Oh,
There is no statewide STAR data? So we would have to go school to school.
Forward tests.
Yeah,
So if you go to WISE-DASH,
The forward, I can look at.
Okay, because I'm curious whether that's just a statewide trend or if it's just us. Listening to you talk, Ryan, about the repeat offender idea, right? That's my shorthand, like kids who are being referred often.
Sure.
It just made me start thinking about, like reputation effect and how some kids get tagged.
Sure.
And when I think about race and bias, that's where my head goes.
For
You
sure.
know,
Yep.
that when you look at, I'm almost more interested in seeing the demographics of people who get multiple referrals to see if that tends to land on people of color. I think that would be an interesting place to look at the data specifically, to see if you have kids who, because we know what happens, who get tagged in the school community. Watch out for this one, and then eyes are on that kid. We see it in SPED and disability, right? Every teacher gets warned ahead of time, and you're, watch out for this one. And, all this stuff is happening over here, and all eyes are on the one kid who's gonna get tagged, so.
And I will say, like, at our level too, I see it with kids' perception of their peers as well as parents'
Yeah.
perception of peers.
It
And that is
impacts,
important work to undo.
I'm shorthanding again, but it impacts tattling. I know who I can report and it's gonna stick. I know who I can report and they're gonna circle, the other kids are gonna circle the wagons. So again, big culture issues, I think it does have a significant impact on academics. When you're that kid, or you look like that kid and you're thinking, I am focused on not getting in trouble here. I don't have mental energy left for looking at the screen and following the instruction. So for me, I just raised lots of worries, you know, as I think about equity and all those things. So just sharing those thoughts.
Any other questions?
I just had
Go ahead,
one,
Danielle.
so the behavior referrals talking about you see speds up, you see it's up for Black students. And you said you guys are talking about why this is, and I'm curious sort of who, when, who, how, like when are you talking about it? How are you talking about it? Is it PD? Is it informal conversations? Is it, I mean, what does that mean?
Yeah, so there's multiple points where those conversations happen. One of the highlights to our team with the academic data is, and just to your point, right, that's a small piece of what our students are. And if you came to one of our coaches meetings where they lead discussions around reading and math, you see, so you triangulate the data in such a way where you have a specific idea of who your students are, which is really cool. But in those conversations, right, as well, when we're talking about data when it comes to academic work, we're talking about students, right, who are out of the room for a referral, who are disengaged in what's happening, right? And so those conversations can happen in those academic conversations. They happen in a culture committee setting. So that's, you know, a grade representative from each grade. We meet monthly to talk about, we focus our conversations really around our culture as a building, and our focus this year is around our Panther Pride. But we are talking about referral data as well. So this was in our agenda for last time when we talked about it very briefly. We did not dive deep into that. And then we talk about it from an SST standpoint as well. So we meet weekly with our SST team. And we talk often about those, as Carla put it, those students who have multiple incidents, right? And that are meeting with our SST team on a regular basis. And because we are trying to make sure that we know what strategies and what implementations are working, we're putting in more data because we need to know what's happening, right? So we also have 5 to 6 people that are responding to radio calls this year, which is a higher increase. So we're able to respond to those quicker. We're able to get more data on those students and see what strategies are working, what aren't, what do we need to change. Yeah.
If you could, what kind of support would you want, or what would you like to see more of, or if you could do anything, you know, how would you, what would you change if you could change anything, or what would you increase, or what would help you to have these conversations be more robust or more often, or with teachers, or you know, effective, really infiltrate the culture? What do you see as, you don't know, you don't have to answer.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things I wish I could point out, but I'm hopeful because I think when we talk about PLC teams and we talk about those students and we're looking at those students holistically rather than just a data point and on a board, I think those conversations when we talk holistically about students are really important, and we don't get a chance to do that so often because in our academic, even though we are talking about specific students, really we're talking about 1 or 2, right? Sometimes that are kind of struggling to engage in the work, and so we don't get to talk about the overall class, the overall grade of what's happening. So I think those PLCs will give us that opportunity to have everybody around the table at the same time, right? Right now we're kind of we have SST meeting together. We have our coaches meeting with our teachers. Teachers meet together, but rarely ever do we get a chance to sit in a room together and talk, right? And so that's a struggle for us, I think. And I think hearing from our staff, that would be something that they would want more of, is to get everybody in the room to have those conversations.
So on your PD days, you guys are not doing a PLC or starting the PLC work?
No, I don't know if we've ever gotten our coaches and all of our SST team into one space with a grade level specific. We do with an individual student, which we call an SST team.
But that's out of need or necessity.
Exactly.
It's not a regular.
We're seeing a trend,
practice.
right? And now we want to
Regular.
change. Yeah.
Ideally, how often would a PLC meet?
In my ideal world.
Once
a week.
Sure. Yeah, no, so
Once a week.
just curious.
Yep.
Is that standard in some districts, any districts? Subtle nods, yes.
Yes, but it is a lot on the teachers to give up the prep time.
Well, if you have to. Okay,
Right.
I was just curious, thank you. Go ahead.
Have you guys, I think I bring this up every once in a while, but have you guys thought about switching up math? Because I guess I know that the STAR sort of aligns with the forward test, and there is some type of equation you can put it through to kind of convert it to a forward score, but I don't know, I always thought math, I guess this is just from, because I've done both, is that those questions seem to be, and the layout seems to be more similar to ACT and I mean, forward's even different than the ACT, but even closer to that. So, I don't know, is there a price or is it that you just prefer Star? Or-
Well, Nicolay uses Star as well, so that was one of the hinge points of why, this was before I came
Yeah.
with Star. So that was
Oh, I know,
one of the reasons why we've been keeping it. But I am investigating, we also have, we're starting to utilize EduClimber and FastBridge and different things like that. So we are starting to do some work around early literacy screeners,
Yeah.
because now PALS is gone, so now we're kind of opening the door to do some work and comparison.
Yeah,
I'm just starting with early lit first before we make any huge changes. I think right now for the staff to change to a whole new system would be a lot for them, so
Yeah.
I think we would have to,
well, yeah, like
do
procedures.
some
But,
conversations with staff.
because I know Alex also has some type of assessment data, but maybe that's not as good. I don't know.
And then really utilizing all different pieces of
Yeah.
data, our report cards, our common formative assessments, our behavior data, our attendance data, all those pieces.
Yeah.
We just spent 4 hours with EduClimber today, and we are really excited about the work that we're gonna be doing and just the holistic.
Okay, was it EduClimber?
EduClimber is a database that pulls in all different types of data, so we can pull in
Oh, I
all the
think-
behavior data, attendance data.
Yeah,
I can look over multiple years, I can see across a student's whole career, any SEL supports, intervention, progress monitoring, any type
Yeah.
of data that you want to put in there, you can create spreadsheets for pretty much anything.
right,
After school sports, all of that information
right,
can be put in there, so you can pull up on the screen. So this is gonna be a huge time saver for our building principals, our teachers. They will not have to put all this stuff into a data wall or any of those types of things. Or our coaches, it'll be readily available, so when we do some of the PLC work,
Yeah.
you're not doing all these spreadsheets and where's the spreadsheet for this? Where, you're pulling 17
Yeah.
different pieces of data, laying it all out. So they won't have to do that, it'll automatically go.
yeah, I think I remember looking at something like that, or maybe the same thing, I have no idea, but no, I remember that,
You can find it.
but that's
by-
not a testing site, that
No,
it just pulls the
no,
data.
but it'll pull the data in, but it gives you some really good information and it aligns, FastBridge, pulls it right in. So you can look at multiple pieces.
Right,
Like we've been talking about, STAR's not the only piece, right?
sure, yeah,
It's one
no,
piece.
if I'm saying like for progress monitoring, like, I don't know, anyway, my only point is that,
We started
Maybe
using
that would-
FastBridge for progress monitoring
Sure.
instead of Ames.
oh, Williams,
Yeah, so that,
The one thing is, I never brought it up, but when he's talking about maps, my daughter had map K4 through 5th grade. And when I got here, I was a little weirded because I couldn't see the growth. I mean, with map, I could actually really see her growth. And it was very meticulous about these are, granted, I saw those big jumps where Jada, and I remember like every year this would happen, that when they do it in fall, she was here.
Yeah.
And then the second one they did, and like, she went up 7 grade levels. And that's like, don't really want to do the test in the first place, summer drain, stuff like that. But it was always very accurate between the fall and the spring, or the winter and the spring. And it evened out. And that's the one they really got to look at and see. And I got her help when she needed on some things, but I could never like really pinpoint it with the STAR test when she was here. So, I mean, and that was a long time ago, and I don't know if technology has changed, but that is one of the things as a parent, even understanding the growth of your child, you can understand it all you want to, but if the parent can't give them the tools to help them at home or understand what they actually need, that's another gap, I believe.
yeah, this is
Go.
basic.
Go ahead.
Sure. I guess this has less to do with STAR versus math. And I feel like we talked about this at a meeting before, but we really do see STAR as literally just a dipstick.
Yep.
And for us, it's a trigger, and it's a trigger that we need to investigate more. Because sometimes it's a trigger to tell us the student is a really bad test taker and their STAR data told us this, but their running records is actually telling us that they read above grade level. And so for us, it's really just a trigger that we need to do a little more investigating into student needs and doesn't tell the whole story. But I also know as a parent how validating it is to see your child's measures on a line graph and how you can see the growth over time because we're visual people. Right?
But it's more so,
Doesn't mean it.
I guess it's more so that when I look at it as a parent, it's, her reading was fine, but it was, they told me that this, she's doing well here, but it's, she could do better if she got more comprehension, like help. So it was like, it was just a little more defined. It wasn't about the numbers. It was like, this is where she's having a problem with. She does read on this level. She could do even better if her comprehension was a little bit better. So that's how we knew that she had a comprehension problem, not a reading problem per se, because she could read all the words and she knew vocabulary, but what was she retaining? So I guess that's I think Danielle went first.
Well, I was just what you said, Kelly, so I'm thinking like, but what we're looking at right now is STAR data.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're talking about how there's so much more.
Yes,
But what we're talking about is STAR data and behavior. So does EduClimber like solve this problem? So like next year we're here and we've got like a more holistic
There'll be a
picture to be talking
dashboard.
about?
Yep. So
Okay.
there'll be a dashboard of all those different pieces.
Okay.
Where we're not trying to put all the spreadsheets.
That's like,
Okay.
When will that start? I mean, if you decide to get it, when will that, when will it, so it will start like over the summer, putting
Over
the
the summer,
information
we're putting
in,
it- we're
and then
putting it
you'll
in now.
work on it
Putting
in
it in.
fall?
So
Okay.
I'm playing with it now.
So just going off of what you said, the biggest indicator of comprehension is not reading ability, but content knowledge. So the more someone knows, the better they can read, to an extent. But with the testing though, I will say as a teacher, I did, or as a former teacher, I did use the data to kind of, from whatever it was, ACT Aspire or STAR testing, to kind of see like, one, it like tells me like, am I being successful? And two, it also showed me like, oh my gosh, yeah, I can't skip the stats unit, you know, because I ran out of time. So I understand that STAR is just a data point for a kid at some point, but again, the aggregate where all of them combined does kind of give you a picture that's useful. And so anyway, based on the fields, I did like math better, but that doesn't mean that's a fact. That is better.
Go ahead,
Prac-
Ms. Young.
Yeah, practitioner, from a practitioner standpoint, a logistical standpoint, to kind of build off of what Kelly is saying, that is a point where we look, it's trigger, right? Map testing is on time, which is great because sometimes it gives us a more accurate view of students who take their time on a test. But I also want to say the amount of time it takes to test 3 times a year is probably double and triple to what it takes for us to run a STAR test. So do we want to spend our time testing kids or do we want to spend our time teaching kids?
Yeah, so, I mean, I've proctored math testing and it was a rare exception that it took very long.
Well, but we're a little bit off track, so let's go back to.
Can I just say one more
Yeah,
thing
go
before we
ahead.
go off this? Because we got
No,
into
go ahead.
referral data and I
Right,
want
go
to
ahead.
make sure that I highlight, I had it in my head, but I get nervous
Go
and
ahead.
forget. But we're talking about culture, right? And I want to highlight the amazing work that our teachers are doing, and we're having school-wide morning meetings back. And when you walk into the building, I know it's not like data that you can see, right? But it's a feeling, right? And
It's
so
different.
the teachers have worked really hard at that, and the culture committee has worked really hard at that. I want to make sure I tell you that.
Well, I do have to say, I think I've been at Glen Hills in the building once a month, or at least twice a month. And then I've gone to Parkway, I think once a month for the school year. And it's just a different environment when you walk in, you know, the teacher, I've gone into the classrooms, I've played with the kids. I haven't done the classrooms here, but I've done it more at Parkway, and I feel like the energy. So I do believe from last year to this year, there is a different vibe, definitely a different vibe. Anything else until so they can finish this up? All right, go ahead and finish it up.
Just a reminder of the district goals again. Anna talked about those at the beginning of the presentation. I'm going to give you the really bird's eye view here. So this is the overall district data on achievement. So you can kind of see from fall to spring, if you look at the black column there, the proficiency change for students. So the big thing to look at, based on our goal, we're looking at a 5% increase. So right now for all students, we're at a 4% increase. So that's the big overall piece to look at. The other thing is, we are making increases in most of our subgroups. So you can kind of see that across the board there. I'm not gonna talk through every piece.
Talented and like students though, their increase is like at all the, it just like, it doesn't, they're not smarter, inherently smarter. Like it's just like, but should have just, I don't know, now it's making me upset, like I'm just a little, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but then you also
Like
look
when
at
you
free
see
lunch.
it like that.
You look at free lunch as well. Students are receiving a free lunch. And that's
But those could, those could still
crossover.
because
Yep.
there's still
Yep.
something about perception or the way teachers or staff or anybody are teaching our white students, or how the curriculum is speaking to white students, possibly, right? Like those are just, we should just be. That's, yeah.
It's
Sorry.
depressing.
Yep.
It's just very upsetting. It's, you just
Yes.
gotta.
And
I'm sorry to interrupt.
There you go.
And I just want to say that, like, when our staff, I will speak for my staff at Glen Hills, when we've taken a look at this data, even though we see increases and like, hey, there's pieces to
Right.
celebrate here, like, I can tell you that the sense of taking that seriously and understanding what we have to undo and redo in order to get it right is
Right.
real for us, and it's taken very seriously. Like, it is big work, and it's work that is gonna take some time, but it's personal work for teachers around their own identities and their biases. And it's also educational work, and it's pedagogical work, and it's content work, and it's curriculum work, right? And it's big. And they see it. They see it.
One of the other things is that when we look at gifted and talented, now that I would see what is the demographic of that, because if the demographic is not all white, or I'm just saying, I don't know what it is here, but that means that those African American kids are achieving something. So what are they doing that we can't do to another school? So I would look at those increases, seeing what the demographic is for those increases also, and seeing what that demographic looks like. Now, Danielle, if it is looking like these increases have more white children than BIPOC kids, then yes, but if they do not, then what are you doing to make this happen? So I guess it's twofold to really look at.
Well, that's the next slides, right? It's the gap
Yeah,
slide.
I'm sorry.
we need to be
Yeah.
we need to be transparent, right? The data.
Those are
So
the bad
we're not gonna get
slides.
better unless we lay it out
Yeah.
there. So
Yeah, thank you.
we're doing it. This is the math data, so you can kind of see some similarities here. I'm going to explain this slide because it might be a little confusing. So you have because the lower, so if you look at the fall gap, that's the gap. They're 17% lower than white students. But if you go all the way to the end, the last column, that's the change in the gap. So the gap is getting larger. So when it says grew 6%, that means the gap has grown on this assessment.
This is brutal data to me. I've just been staring at this for 10 minutes.
It's hard to look at.
Yeah, it's
But
just-
we can't improve it without looking at it.
I know it's national and still, it's just, that doesn't make it any easier for me to see it in our school district. It just hurts.
Great, thank you. Is that the end of your
Being transparent.
presentation?
And then this is the data for the math.
Okay.
This is the long game work,
Long
right? I
game,
mean,
yeah.
that's what we're all committed to.
Yeah,
This is
so
the
this
long
is
game.
Pretty
This
much
is just
the
a
same
reminder
stuff.
to say it like this. So we're all in it to win it. We're all in it together and we have to dig deep and do that hard introspective work and just bring it.
Yep, and we're gonna
Right.
keep bringing the data back, so.
Yeah, and I think it really means we have to ground ourselves in equity.
Yeah.
I mean, that's their foundation. So.
That's,
Thank
that's the data, so you have it.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you.
Deanna, Ryan, know.
Does the, let's see.
Thank you for making this
Let's
easy for me to
go.
read it.
We're gonna go to the 2A, which is policy.
Oh,
No, we have the music
proposal.
proposal is embedded,
Yes.
the fourth
Wait,
grade
hold
music
on.
proposal.
Yeah.
I don't.
It's
Oh,
part of Alex's executive summary.
Section.
I like the way
Why
you
isn't it that?
hit the stretch, Anna.
I know, that's
Trying not to.
I know,
It's embedded in the executive summary.
So everyone should have a copy of the music proposal.
Yep.
For fourth grade, I'm just gonna put it up here. So friends for the music department is here. Did everyone have an, do you want me to kind of read some highlights of this?
I read it.
Pretty much the proposal is to divide up by homeroom teacher. And so everyone has an opportunity to participate in band, choir, orchestra, and world music for the fourth grade level over here. Yes, everyone's.
Do we have enough band
Same
instruments?
What?
Do we have enough band instruments?
You would share also they would do for.
Yeah,
Fourth grade in band, they usually focus on recorder and the Nuvo instruments, which can be sanitized every quarter. So they would just go to another group of kids after they're done.
You guys feel good about this proposal?
Yeah.
You worked on it too. Yeah. I love it. I love this. I love the idea of introducing students like this. It was always one of the worst things, like having the fourth grade being just like mystified by how they're supposed to choose what they want to do for fifth grade. So thank you for this. I love it.
Do we have any other questions? Don't. This is just discussion. It'll come back to the board for.
Is it gonna be a huge, I do have a question. I'm so sorry. Just started coming out of my mouth. Can I ask it? How much work is this gonna take for you guys to implement this new idea?
Well, I think like we kind of just have to think about the logistics because like being an orchestra teacher, I'm gonna think about how I'm going to have each set of kids have instruments. And like you're talking about band instruments, so the orchestra is going to have like violins, violas, cellos. I'm gonna like maybe give them all a chance per quarter to try each instrument and then do it again with each homeroom. So there are some logistics involved, especially when it comes to instruments for sure. And I think the other piece of it, what we're trying to do is to streamline our music theory curriculum. So what we do right now is we have Theory Thursday. And we're sort of in our own kind of territory as to what we teach. And we want to keep it, at least in fourth grade, more of a universal music theory curriculum, since they're still so young and they need to learn how to read. They all need to learn how to read music. So that's the biggest piece of it, I think, is streamlining the music theory.
Can you speak a little bit?
Speak more.
Your
what?
voice goes up and
Oh,
down,
I'm
so I
sorry.
can't hear you.
That's the biggest component to streamline is music theory, and that would be like 1 day a week that we would do that.
My wish for you is that it's successful and that you have the
Yeah.
time you need to, and the resources you need to successfully implement what'll be a pretty big change, right? In how
Yeah.
you're teaching fourth grade, so.
Why it would be even more beneficial.
Go ahead and,
We talked about
You're
this,
here,
we
come
were
on.
talking about this yesterday or today, that when you look at other schools, they meet typically once or twice a week for music. At every other school I've worked at, it's been once or twice a week for 30 minutes. And we see our kids every day for 40 minutes. So essentially, you're fitting one whole school year of a trimester, because we did the math, or a quarter of it is fit into one quarter for us, what they would get in one full year as a fourth grader at another district, but they're basically getting all 4 band, choir, orchestra, and world general music. They're getting 4 years worth of fourth grade music, technically. If you want to look at numbers.
Andy,
It doesn't
did you raise your hand? Andy, did you raise your hand? Did you have your hand raised?
No,
Yeah, and we
no, no.
feel like implementing this is gonna, you know, like you said, students were mystified when they came into fourth grade, not really knowing what's orchestra, like, what am I doing? If they get to try each one, by the end of fourth grade, they're gonna have a way better idea of what they wanna pick in fifth grade. And we're hoping to see that they stick with that through eighth grade. And that's just gonna, I don't know, sticking with something with one thing, I mean, there's a lot of value to that, because when we teach skill in orchestra, band, choir, general music, we're usually building on that skill. So if you're starting in fourth grade or picking it in fifth grade and you do fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth, by eighth grade, you're gonna be really great at it. You're gonna be an intermediate player. You're gonna be ready for high school. So that's what we want to encourage the kids to do ultimately.
Well, I'll give my 2 cents. I really like this program. I don't do this often, but I keep bringing up Jada, and I won't do it again. But she was in MISO in second grade where she went through that, and up until we moved here, she was in that, and she did viola all the way through. And then she came here and did viola, and then she did viola at the high school level and never practiced a day at home. Didn't know she was any good. But the funny thing is, she's picked it back up as she is in Oshkosh. So even though it went a whole year that she didn't do anything, she has picked it back up just to do it. So I think embedding that in people, in the kids, even though they may not do it in high school, sometimes they pick it back up, but she still can read music. She's like, I can read that. So I like it.
And music education is associated with strong mental health and well-being, it's part of the CASEL model, so.
That didn't
Yeah, strong math skills.
Well, that didn't help my child, but.
This
No.
also builds off of, the work that Mrs. Sharnick is doing too, over at the elementary school. So it kind of flows so nicely, just going into fourth grade as well.
I appreciate
there-
you music teachers, thank you for being here.
Thank you. That will go to, if there's any discussion or action, that'll go to the school board meeting. Now, I guess we can go to 2B policy. Who is
So-
running that one?
So we had our food service audit. It's something that occurs every 5 years, kind of in a longer, just pandemic, so they had to go on site for schools. So they are looking at our day operations and then also looking at our some policies. And when they reviewed some of our policies, some big changes that needed to happen, some with language, bringing it up to current times,
And so this is just the first read for the policy that they are recommending for us to change. And so it's just a review, elaborate also making sure it's more clear language, and then just making sure that is just different languages that have to be on a lot of our policies.
So right now I'm going to, this is an action item, so I'm gonna treat it as an action item. I'm gonna ask for a motion.
A motion to approve all of these?
Yes, and then we'll discuss and we can change, but we put the motion in discussion. So we are, Ben has motion for what? Rules 458, 760, 761, and 763 as a first reading. Do we have a second? I will second it, so we can keep going. Now there is any discussion from the audience on these books? Okay, now we'll come back to you guys and we'll discuss it. Go ahead.
Policy by
Hold on.
policy. Should we go policy by policy?
Yeah, we can. It's
So my big thoughts are around 458.
458.
So that's the school wellness policy and rules. I got stuck here. I am curious, Lindsay, whether these are just the form policies that WASB gave to us, or if these were revised and.
So these are the templates from the policy resource guide with the work that we're doing.
Okay, so these are the WASB templates. Yep. Okay, so I actually want to table these, but let me just say why. So number one, I got stuck in the wellness plan. I don't know if this language is required by federal law or something, but it was, sorry. Let me find it. On the policy, I got stuck at the highlighting of childhood obesity. So hold on.
Oh, on 458?
458. Where's my?
On the
No, on the policy. So it says the local school wellness policy requires. Yeah, so it's a second paragraph in the
Okay.
policy. The local school wellness policy required by federal law is a written plan that includes methods to promote student wellness, prevent and reduce childhood obesity, and provide assurance that school meals and food, et cetera, are made available or consistent with nutritional guides. So that was like this big red flag for me. Prevent and reduce childhood obesity as the single health issue that's being highlighted in our wellness plan is just, I mean, like big neon flashing light, stigma, right? So, you know, if you look at like the three main factors in wellness, it's nutrition, exercise, rest, right? I mean, there are a lot of sources for that, not obesity. 2 leading causes of death in use, accidents and suicide, not obesity. You know, I look at all the stigma we have around body size and weight, especially with girls in our culture. I do not want a policy that highlights obesity as the sole health issue. There's massive equity issues around that. You know, I spun out. That's like, I was like yelling at the wall. Let's talk about food deserts. Let's talk about access to healthy vegetables. Let's talk about mental health and how weight, high or low, both ends, is an artifact of mental health and depression. Maybe what we want to highlight is mental health. You know, I don't know. So as I read this, I thought, WASB, is this required by federal law? And then I stopped myself and I was like, all right, I'll go look at the plan. And then when I look at the rule, right, which I think is supposed to be the plan, it does not read like, it reads like someone cut and pasted all weird all over it.
The plan, doesn't
That, I think that's supposed to be the plan, the rule. So when I looked at that, there was like this place where it says like, let me find it, I'm so sorry, it's way down. For purposes of carrying out triennial assessment requirements, the district shall do all of the following: fresh fruit and fruit cups. You know, there's a list of snacks. I'm like, what? That's what the district shall do for triennial assessments is string cheese and whole grain crackers. So my wish is that someone in our administrative team should look at these and kind of make them better than what WASB has handed us before we do a first reading, because my worry is in all the, you know, once we get to the second reading, we're like rushing through them and I don't want it to get lost. So I don't, you know, I just think I want us to pause, but unless we're absolutely required to push this forward to be in compliance with something, but I want to make sure we have a conversation about what our policy should look like from an equity lens, from a whole body, whole human lens, and just making sure, you know, we don't have to follow WASB. Even if this is what everyone else does, we can do better, you know, so I want us to think about that and kind of pause and step back.
So I just wanna, I get what you're saying and I tend to agree. Let's figure out if all of these policies need to be pulled out or just this one. Do you have issues with other ones? So, I mean, because if there's no issue with other ones, all of them at least?
Well.
No, I'm just saying, is it at least all of
Sorry,
them?
I'm gonna pull, let me pull up. Scores.
I'm not trying to make trouble.
No,
You
you're
know, I
not
want us
making
to get it
trouble. No, no,
right.
you're not making
Instead
trouble. I
of
just
going through
want to see
iterations, right?
if there's
Yeah.
some that everybody agrees on, then we can get, hold on one second. If there's one that everybody can agree on, we can adjust this, amend the motion.
Yeah.
And do that one and then bring the other work back. If there is something that is wrong with each of these that we think we need to do work on, then we can defer it to next month's committee of the cow meeting.
Yeah.
And work through those, but we have to do a little more time to work through them and ask her questions.
Can I just state, under, if it was a template, that means somebody filled in the template. Do we know who that was?
I had the TPI gave us recommended template. And
Okay.
then we also looked at the policy resource guide.
So were they merged? Okay,
Wow.
that's what it feels like
I
sometimes.
don't have a PDF of what you guys are looking at, so that's
But-
why I'm like,
So you and Allison, I'm assuming reviewed all of these policies? Or did you, or did Allison?
I would say more Allison, but what I would say though is that I can find out from the USDA what is like, there are certain things like free and reduced, there's certain language that we legally have to have in it. But as far as like the obesity, I'm not sure if that's something that like legally we have to have that language. And so I can do a little bit more clarification from our auditor to find out what are we legally required to have in there and then.
That would be important to know, and my understanding of the wellness plan is that this policy and these rules dictate how we create a local wellness plan. If you go to TPI's website, then there's a checklist for what your wellness plan should include and how you should make it. We are due to have one created by June of 23, although you don't submit it to anybody. It has to go in your.
It's a state requirement.
It's the DPI, yeah, so we
Oh,
follow what
okay.
DPI says, and every 3 years you're. Yes, so by June of 2023, we're supposed to convene the committee and get stakeholders involved. And so I have questions about like, have we had a wellness plan before?
No, I couldn't find anything
don't
that
think
there
so.
really has been anything, and like I said, you know, we haven't had a
Right.
audit, and
And
I think it was 7 years.
If we're gonna, like, I have like bigger thoughts. I feel like this is gonna be really good and great work to do. But like, I would like to feel confident that these initial policies in the first reading as well were like you guys are like, yes, these are awesome.
Yeah.
They're good. Yeah. So
Right.
I have a problem with, can I just? do
I
have a
was
problem.
just telling him, I will.
Oh, sorry,
he
I
can
thought
put
you
his
were-
head down, just keep going.
I just heard.
I know.
Well, and I
No,
also,
I just
Andy,
want to,
let
so
her finish.
there's a big problem in 763 for me, which talks about management of student school meal accounts. Like I just wrote out, like, this all feels wrong. Is it legally required? And there's stuff about if you have a negative balance, deciding whether the kid can get a meal or this crappier free meal that would single them out.
Yeah.
And I know that that is not enforced because my daughter has had negative balances multiple times at the $20 or $30 because she's over here getting hot lunch and I didn't know it. And nobody's hounding me to pay it. So there's a fear that unconscious or conscious bias is gonna have that be enforced against certain people and not other people. And there's an option to just not feed a kid. Like, as a district, are we gonna do that? No.
And it
We're
shouldn't be
not
our
gonna do
policy
that, so
then,
it shouldn't
yeah.
be in our policy unless it's legally required, and then we could be like, so my point is, these feel like a baseline, and I think we could do so much more. So I think our first stab at these policies should be far more inclusive, far more expansive on a definition of what wellness is, and what are we doing for staff? If we're gonna do this work around students, what about a staff wellness policy at the same time? So I would table it to kind of have Allison's thoughts and have, just do a little bit more deep thinking.
Or even like.
Hold on. Ben?
I'm done.
Yeah, well, with the staff wellness thing, we do have the WAC thing going on, which is good.
Yeah, I
but-
think we have
yeah.
staff wellness initiatives, but do we have like a policy? Do we have,
Well,
I don't know.
I wonder if that's hard because they're adults, but, yeah.
Maybe.
But,
I
yeah,
don't
no,
know.
I don't
I'm just
know.
asking,
Yeah,
just thinking aloud.
Yeah, no, it's not. Okay, but, oh yeah, what kind of food is served here? Because, when I went here, you could get fries and pizza every day.
So we offer vegetarian
Oh, yeah.
options. It's definitely something that we're working with on right now. It's just kind of, we've had some concerns for some of the food that's being served and how can we kind of update it. And
So
we
that's
had
still
a lot
not.
of- Well, I would just say the selections and the presentation of the food have not been stellar.
Yeah.
And so it's been working with Aramark and kind of saying, hey, like, you guys need to up your game. And, we're up for our contract with them this year. And just also, having that conversation of this is the expectation of what students should be receiving. And this is what we're getting. And, I had a couple of staff members give a lunch as well. So I wanted student feedback, I wanted staff feedback. And just be able to say, what was the portion, what was the variety of the options that were available, and just like really taking in all of that information. And I guess I would just say, I wanted to just highlight one thing that Danielle had said is like legally you could never not offer a student home lunch. So I want to make that very clear.
Well, this
So they get a
policy-
cheese sandwich. Is this
No, this policy says you do have the option of not feeding a kid if they repeatedly, it's the rule.
And then the other thing that I would also just echo with the negative lunch challenge is that we didn't collect any money, my understanding is during the pandemic. So like we had free lunches for 2 years. And then, with the pandemic, there really wasn't much that was done to collect these. We've looked at that and, we started having more conversations, like sending messages out, but it's also like, we're trying to make sure that families that are free and reduced, like they're not getting that message. Because are they negative because they have to reapply for their free and reduced benefit? Or are they negative because they've, taken a lot of a la carte items? So it's looking at a lot of that too. But I would say that's something that we've looked at in the last, few months quite a bit, because in the last few years, it's kind of gone by the wayside with the pandemic.
Okay, hold on, Carla. Andy.
So a couple things. First of all, I think that policies that are being proposed, they do address things that we haven't addressed before, but there's some overlap. And my recollection, which may be wrong, and I just didn't have a chance to go back to the policies to look at it, is that we wrote in a lot of discretion for this has to be linked to, and I just don't remember what the discussions were there. Conceptually, I don't have a problem approving the first reading, but two things. First of all, Al's not here, and I mean, a lot of these questions, I just feel much more comfortable with her here. And two is, and related to that is, we've spent a lot of hard time working on policy special meetings, and so to do it in this format and to potentially take action, I mean, it's noticed as an action item. I am just not that comfortable doing the cow today. So I'm on the fence, but I guess what kind of, breaks for me is, I know that when we do the cow in April, if we do it then, Alice will be around, and I just think it's going to be a better opportunity, or we can have a special policy meeting on this. And I think that we're missing a key person here. And so the other action items, or the other items, they are informational and they're very helpful. And I think we're all likely to support these, as at least a framework. But I think that it makes sense just to not act today, be it the formal tabling or.
So what I'm gonna do is ask for a vote on this, so, and then we can say no. And then that sends it back. We don't have to table, because if we table, we usually have to say when we're bringing it back, and we just don't know that right now. We're gonna.
So we would just vote.
So we
Just
voted-
vote it down. I would say vote it down for now, and then we can work on bringing it back.
So because it was a corrective, like it was a finding on our audit, we had to do a corrective action. So part of the requirement for the corrective action was being able to say that we were at least doing the work to update. We don't have a deadline of when we have to finish it,
Oh, good.
but we at least have to show that we're going to make the progress. and do it.
Right, so we can vote it down and then bring it to the next.
We have,
So, yeah, I don't want to cause any illegality. I'm just-
No, I
but-
mean, I can at least show we got it.
Because I know our teachers don't have enough to do. I'm joking. It would be nice if you brought these policies, if you're trying to really look at the lines and bring a really closer to finished product back to us. It would be nice if you could get stakeholders engaged, like on the wellness policy, get our PE staff and our nurse looking at it. On food services and free lunch, obviously, you're heavily engaged in that. It would be nice if you could find time to look at it and maybe amend the policy in a way that reflects our current practices and what you think would be the wise practice, and that way we would have our relevant stakeholders putting their eyes on these, and then we would know as a board that in our schoolhouses, folks have looked at these policies, I'm looking at some hard work here, and
So
we'll
what
bring
I,
a different lens to it than the WASB template,
so what I would do is we'll vote on it, and then we'll instruct, since we are voting no, we will instruct her, Allison. The instructions that we have were going into more in-depth, getting some clarity on the legalities of the language. I think that's what can we do.
I just want to ask one quick clarifying question. Well, maybe it's two. I promise much more than that, but long story short. A, can we separate these two into wellness and food and deal with them separately? And B, just to be clear, do we have the same legality concern, the same immediacy or whatever tack on wellness that we do on food?
Sorry, I'm sorry, can you run it back?
I know what he's saying. He's asking if the food and the wellness are
We
separate.
deal with them separately
Yeah.
and have time to deal with.
We can.
I don't think that with
We can
respect to what
separate-
Carla was talking about, that we necessarily have the
No.
same discussion about food that we need about the wellness. but I
Hold
agree
on,
with that.
what we can do is,
In the
Allison
future,
can
not
figure
today.
out which way we should pull this out, and, because we might have some information for the food faster than we have wellness, and we might be able to bring the wellness ones in. So it's just, let's just have her figure out the way she wants to bring them back to us. But I'm gonna ask for a vote. All in favor of the first reading of policy. What is this again? To exactly what is the motion was.
Policy.
458,
Um,
760, 761.
Yes, thank you. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. No?
No.
0 to 5, or 5 to 0, no, or 0 to 5, I guess, depending on what you say.
I feel
This
so
motion
bad.
does pass, and we will send it back to them for work. I did not want to, and just so I didn't want to table it or lay it over, because I don't know how much time, usually if you table labor,
Yeah, that's okay.
it's a time frame where you need to say when this is coming back. And she might need some more, or Allison and the team might need a couple weeks, they might need a month, but as long as we know it's coming back and they're working.
Thank you, Liz.
So that next is 2C, back to Lindsay. building and grounds.
I just wanted to provide an update. We're in the thick of our facility study. We've hired our architect CRA, and they've already done work, they're already starting to work underway with getting complete our building. We did interviews with with 5 firms for ownership this past week. There were 3 that kind of rose to the top of the team unanimously. So we've asked for formal proposals from all three. They were due today. So I'm gonna finish reference checks, do the proposals. I'll bring all three proposals along with our recommendation to the next board meeting for that owner's rep. And then by the end of this week, we'll have the construction RFP. So we're still on time to be able to bring a really robust study to the board in May.
I would like, and I don't know what this looks like, but I would actually like one more person on that referral committee. Just that has done, pardon me, for when you guys are looking at the owners, what is it called? The owners rep. Someone that is-
It's still the interview team. So
No, I said I would like to add one more person to that interview team. And I would like to add somebody, I know about 3 people have been owner reps that are part of our community that have actually gone through the work. And I've seen them, they worked with the city to make sure, and they know what's they're looking for. So they wouldn't be the rep, but I really would like them to say, I know what this is supposed to look like. I know what there's 3, people in Glendale that I would like to refer to be on this committee to, and that I can talk to you about that to see who it is, but I think they are key because they caught the stuff that the city didn't catch, their owners rep didn't catch, they caught it. And I think the 2 of them are really proficient in that, and their firm is not part of this list. So I think it's even better that we have
Why
somebody
weren't they?
else on top of that.
Why weren't these amazing local owners reps part of our list?
Conflict,
Oh, okay.
just
Okay.
city work
Got it.
versus, 2 of them they work with the city.
Okay.
Another one doesn't want to, they don't have their company doesn't have the capacity to do it. But I believe it's very important that we have our own person that is looking at even the owner's rep to make sure that they're getting the job done.
I think that,
Hold on, Ben had to stand up first. Go ahead, Ben. I'm going by
What?
hands up first.
What is owner's rep?
So basically, they are the kind of voice for the district. So when we're going through the facility study, they're that liaison between the architect, the construction manager, and they bring a lot of knowledge from both construction side and the architecture side. And so, for example, in owner's rep, you get a bid for something with roofing, and they might think, hey, this is something that we could do, like to bid out directly and save like $400,000. They're just doing it right now in just the design process, like just in the facility process. So when we're doing the population study and just also looking at everything with the buildings themselves, they have a lot more knowledge than I'm able to bring to the table. And when I talk to all the districts, even ones that have far more experience directors of buildings around, they also had owners rep, just because again, it's that person that's looking out for the district and can bring that extra level of knowledge that in a day-to-day.
Their sole goal is to best interest of the district. So for instance, like the architectural firm, they're gonna have their own way of kind of looking at things, and they're gonna think that this is best. And we may think something different, but this owner's rep says absolutely not. This, you should be going here, or there's another cheaper way to do it, to just make sure that we're just not following willy-nilly at whatever the architect says.
So we have to hire a consultant to tell us if the architect firm is making good recommendations for us.
Yes.
It's,
Well,
yeah, sort
To
of.
give us
Um,
advice.
It's
I would
extremely
say it's
common.
not. Yeah,
It's a
not-
common role in commercial real estate and in development like this, because we have no expertise in-house for this. It's like a profession in
So
commercial real
how
estate.
much does that usually cost?
So it's a variety. Like I said, I'm just starting to get the proposals in.
Yeah,
And so some of them are like an hourly rate, and then some of them are.
what about what's the
She
hourly
hasn't,
rate.
she said she hasn't gotten.
Well, just in general, like I'm sure other districts have hired, you said 10 other
So
districts.
I don't feel comfortable disclosing that in public,
Oh.
just because it's a bit, like, if anybody else from one of the other firms is listening, I don't want to disclose that.
Can I just ask a couple of questions? First off, Ms. Bupick was talking about getting someone else to be part of the interview. All the interviews are done.
Yeah.
Right. So secondly, with respect to the process that's left, all we really need to do is get the proposals, right? So when we, I think that my biggest thing is that the third Wednesday is really 2 weeks away. And I really would love to get those proposals in advance so that we can just kind of, go through them. And have some time to ask some questions about it. But my bigger question is, I'm going through this with McLean, we have an owner's rep, and, we have an owner's rep for the referendum, which was an $80 million referendum that, it's correctly processed, it's correctly started. Right now, we're dealing with it with the facility study, and I don't know, I guess in terms of scope, in fact, we have an architect. I guess I don't understand the reason why at this point we need an owner's rep. I mean, because we don't know what's gonna happen. I mean, I'll be 100% behind it. There's, firm on here that Nicole's using, and, I am familiar with some of these names, and I'm sure that they're all terrific people and terrific organizations, but I guess it's just speak to why we need that at this point, when we don't know what we're doing down the road.
Sure. So I would say two things. One, all of the proposals that we're getting are just for this facility study phase. None of the proposals that we are getting or any of the hires that we're doing right now are for anything if and when we would do anything after the facility study. So if and when we were to do a major capital improvement project, we would do another RFP and have another proposal. So these proposals are just for this phase. The reason for the owner's rep is because, for example, one of the things that I'm going to be looking for in a construction manager, in my mind, I can think of these are the areas, the things that I need to focus. But an owner rep is going to be able to tell me, well, are you making sure a construction manager, when they're giving you these costs, are factoring in the cost of any changes in supplies, or are they giving you accurate date?
So it's an expert basically to help you understand the language that they're giving and to be kind of your agent, as opposed to hiring a lawyer or someone else in that regard. So at this point, there really might be, but we don't know. We don't even know what that might be yet. So let me ask you one last follow-up, which is, would this be hourly? Would this be flat fee?
So like I was saying, for the owner's rep, I've gotten one for a lump sum and one for an hourly rate. And I would say the amount of time that we'll need for an owner's rep is not going to be in between now and May. It's really just going to be like helping look at the contract. And so, you say an hourly rate because it's the amount of time that we need, because it's better to invest it if and when we need something further down the road. But I would rather have spend the money and an hourly rate or whatever the case is, to have somebody that I feel like has the expertise, because I don't want to bring anything, like when we bring this to the board or to the community, I want to make sure that we have all of our bases covered, that we can answer any question that people have asked. Like, what have you done to look at our facilities? And what have you done to look at our land? What have you done to look at all the different costs? So all of those things that I wouldn't necessarily be able to know to bring, they're bringing their expertise to make sure we're addressing all of those questions so that we can be well informed when we come in.
Just for what it's worth, I think it would be insane to proceed without an owner's rep. This is just my own bias, being married to a real estate finance professor. And I asked him, I went home, I was like, the heck is an owner's rep? And he's like, how can you possibly do anything with referendums or building improvement in the school district without an owner's rep? Because we don't even know what questions to ask. I mean, that's what I hear you saying. This is just not something you do enough to have a clue. So that's what the owner reps bring. They bring a clue to know, to navigate with us and hold our hands, and we're like this and they're holding our hands, and they probably bring another layer of insurance.
So what we're gonna do is, before the next meeting or whenever you're ready to hire this person, you were gonna give us the
I'll give them to you probably Monday or Tuesday.
Okay, we'll have it, we'll send it out probably when Allison comes back in, next week at the update. We'll have all connected and update, giving all the RFP information and then your recommendation. I would at least I would want somebody else to review it. I just realized what I said. I didn't mean interview, I mean review the RFPs. All right, thank you. And we'll go on to 2D. Equity, who is doing?
Sure, easy peasy, super fast, unless anyone has questions. Equity Committee has been working hard. We had a good working meeting and came up with draft non-negotiables, a draft equity lens, and a more technical document, which includes some definitions relevant to equity. So we are now starting to roll out these two documents, the non-negotiables and the equity lens, which are attached to the agenda to get feedback from community. So we brought copies to the Black History Month presentation, which was a great place to just kind of first start throwing this stuff out. I think Allison is making arrangements now to do some broadcast emails into the community. Danielle and I are going to be reaching out to principals soon about coming into the schoolhouses for a couple lunch periods with pizza to try to get staff into the staff room with us to talk. I've reached out to some clubs, Black Student Union, No Place for Hate, Rainbow, Drummers with Mr. Torrance. BSU. So we're gonna be meeting with clubs, we're gonna be meeting with the admin team, and we're super, super excited. These documents did not turn out looking like what I thought they would look like, but they're amazing and I love them. And we haven't wordsmithed hard. We kind of tried to pull back, both of us, from thinking about every word because we want the community to do that. So I'm super excited about this and excited to lead into engagement with community to get feedback.
And just timeline would be, so March 21st Equity Committee meets, we'll be sort of digesting, processing all the feedback we receive, working on finalizing that. There was talk of also creating a third document, which would be a board policy around equity, which if we can be done in the next couple of meetings, we may bring to the board administration with a recommendation in May or June. There's a timeline. And so, yeah, that's it.
Consultant has been a super help for us.
Yes.
Lori Stoll. And the timing of this is, of course, apropos of I was thinking about all this as we were going through the achievement gap data, because I think this is going to be fascinating. And I'm talking longer than I meant to. The non-negotiables are especially interesting because a couple committee members made a very strong point that non-negotiables ought to be accessible to youth, right? That a lot of non-negotiables we see in school are built around technical stuff, around curriculum and teacher behavior and discipline numbers and all that. And they wanted something you could slap up on a poster with bold text that every kid in the schoolhouse can read and be empowered by, right? Which is a really interesting idea, to be able to look at that, look at what's happening in front of them, whether it's a teacher or a student or whatever, compare and say, I see a problem, or I see something good, and then to be empowered to act with everyone on the same page. So it's a very powerful idea.
Uniform across the district, because previously the ICS work that we sort of learned about that kind of fell off was done disparately in both, like Glen Hills has their own non-negotiables, Parkway has their own non-negotiables, they're different. And so, yeah, there's a history, yeah, which is it's not normal under ICS necessarily, but there's backstory, but it's not ideal. And so what you'd like to do is have them be you'd like to have the district all have the same foundation. And Allison is looking to this work from the equity committee, I think is excited about hopefully incorporating it into strategic planning as well.
So for the board, we're probably going to come to you in April, I think, with final sort of foundational equity documents.
But are open to feedback now too.
Yeah. So that's for everyone who's here, I would say, bring it.
Yeah.
Dump. dump your thoughts on me. I don't think it's possible to get too much feedback too.
When is your next equity meeting? Just
March
to,
21st.
Make sure everybody knows.
I think we have them routinely on the fourth Tuesday, is that the fourth Tuesday,
so,
with a couple
Tuesday.
exceptions.
That's our human growth development.
Super excited.
That's why I know.
I was
I was
like,
like,
the
this
21st,
day.
what's the
Could I come, could I come check
So
that out?
March
Okay,
21st.
that's it, we're done. Any questions?
So we are
Thank
gonna
you for
go
the work that
to,
you guys are doing.
we're gonna go to 3A future agenda topics. This should not be, go ahead.
I don't know why this is on this, but as
I
long as
know
it's
it,
there,
And I will never have it on here again.
I would love to get a GT update.
Oh.
It's been a while. I want to hear what's going on with GT and our response to audit and stuff. Maybe we can get
We can tell
that someday.
not directly. do that. There is. Since this is their, I don't know if this goes into here, but we will be bringing Belitha. I think that's her, how you pronounce her name. She informed me that our gifted and or that it's the group called Future City, thank you. They have been approved to submit experiments to NASA. This is the only school in the state that is doing this. And she also will be going into virtual space, sort of. So she will be doing this plan where it will feel like she's in space. She might not be there exactly, but everything is surrounding it is space. She will be performing the experiments in space with this. So this is a big thing, and this is the only teacher and the only school in Wisconsin. I have talked to the governor about this, so we're gonna try to. Well, we're waiting a little bit to get all the information, but we need to do a fundraiser too to help, because they're trying to do a documentary. And I don't know how that looks or how that works, but they're trying to do a documentary about Glen Hills. They were filming yesterday. They filmed a little bit today. And this is one of the things where I'm trying to get state money. I'm gonna ask the city if we have a little bit of funds to help. I'm gonna go out to bed, I may not get them, but I just think this is very important. This could be at the Milwaukee Film Festival, this documentary, this could be with what did she say, National Geographic. There's a bunch of different places that Glendale-River Hill, or the school district and the school will be just kind of publicized. And so I am working on that, because she called me like yesterday and said, Tamika, can you help me with this? So I'm definitely trying to help her with this on the funding side, but we also need to maybe do a fundraiser to let people know now what exactly is going on. And she is sending me, I told her to send me an email with what the program is, what she will be doing, what the kids are doing, and then what's the ask, because I said, they gotta tell me how much they need. We ain't just slapping money to them. We need to know. So it's a great opportunity. I'm so excited about what our kids are doing. There's no other, and she kind of is so excited about this, and it's incorporating not just gifted and talented, but every kid. And so that is what is great about this. Any other future topics? Or visitor participation first.
Time for the arm wrestling now. And stretching.
Going once, going twice, close. 5A.
Second.
We have a motion by Carla to adjourn, second by Danielle to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you for sticking around.
I
everyone.
need-
For